Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of CYC Youth Chat. Today we're very blessed. We've got Bossy with us, and Beck, Gabriella, and Dave. And today we're going to discuss something which is very serious, and in one way or another I think every single one of us can relate to it, and like we're all going to experience it in some sense of our life, and that's loneliness. And we'll start with a very nice quote from Blaise Pascal. He said, "There's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every man, which cannot be filled by any created thing, but only by God, the Creator made known through Jesus." So, you know, whether we're single, we're married, or like we're around lots of people, or on our own, or old or young, doesn't matter, we can always experience loneliness. And we know that loneliness is not a good thing. Like, when we think about Genesis, and God looked at Adam and said, "It's not good that man should be alone." Like, loneliness, it's not a good thing. But where does it come into our spiritual life? What does loneliness mean? Why do we experience loneliness? Where does it come from? All that kind of stuff. So what do you guys think about when we mention loneliness?
To be honest, like looking at loneliness as understanding what it actually means, I feel like it's not a fact. It's just a feeling. It's our perception. Looking at the quality of our relationships and saying, "I feel lonely in my head." It's not about the amount of people that are surrounding me. It's how I actually perceive the quality of the relationship that I'm having at this moment. And saying it's not fulfilling what I want, and so I feel lonely, and then that leads into more negative thoughts, and then the cycle continues. You think, I'm lonely, I'm by myself, and then you go on to perceive every relationship as in that negative light.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sums it up perfectly, yeah. I feel like there's a common conception there, like if we're feeling lonely or whatever, like that we're maybe doing something wrong in our spiritual lives. Like, should we, like, be feeling lonely if we're like, with Christ? Is that something that's natural, or is it something that maybe like sometimes like a cost that we might have to bear is loneliness? Is that, or is it does it mean that we're doing something wrong? Like,
is like that depends on whether loneliness is a negative feeling or a positive feeling. Like, I think obviously the ideal, if we're at the where we want to be in our spiritual life, at like where God wants us to be in a good point in our spiritual life, I don't think that the negative feeling loneliness should be there or would be there, because like with the God-shaped vacuum in the heart, Abuna was saying, I was saying, like, what's the difference in me saying I'm happy and like an atheist or a non-Christian person saying I'm also happy? It's like that happiness doesn't last. So like in the same sense, if you're in a bad period of loneliness, like we have Christ, like it's something we're not lonely, like we have Christ with us.
And I think sometimes loneliness can be such a good thing. Like for me, I personally feel like it's God chasing after my own heart. Like when I feel lonely, like I realize that these relationships aren't going to satisfy. Like, yeah, exactly. Like we can keep chasing, we can keep, doing everything in our own power to kind of like feel that fulfillment like you were talking about. But we're never going to feel it. Like, and the only way we're going to feel it is with Christ. And I think that like it's a positive thing because God, like he's there when we're lonely, and like it'll be at points where you feel lonely, you feel you've hit rock bottom, that you feel like the most amazing comfort you've ever felt in your life. Like I know with me, in times where I've felt really lonely and I've just sat there and cried before God, I've never felt so comforted in my life. I've never felt the presence of God so much in my life. So like I thank God for those moments that like I've felt lonely and that like I've gone through that. But I think, like we were saying before, like why are you lonely? Is it something that you're doing? Is sometimes people are just really negative. They don't see the positives in situations, so they isolate themselves and things like that. Like so I feel like we have to be positive in how we look at things and stuff like that. I don't know how to explain it.
Like I know a friend of mine, I think he has the worst luck. So I had a lot of bad things have been happening to him, and I wish I could tell him, God is there for you, but it just keeps getting worse and worse. And even there's a verse in the Bible that says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Like even like the heavies, or I think that was Christ, the prophecy about Christ, why have you forsaken me? Like how do you tell someone that it's gonna be okay, but things are getting worse and worse? I don't know.
I think it's like as Christian men and women, like there's a truth that we have to know. Like there's a fact that we can feel lonely, but we're never alone. And Christ said that himself, like in John 16, and like he's speaking about the cross, like his passion is days away, and he's saying, you're all going to desert me. You guys have followed me for 3 years, you love me, I love you, and like this is and you guys are going to desert me. The ones who are closest to my heart, you're going to desert me, and the Son of Man will be alone. Except I'm not alone, because the Father is with me, is what he said. So even like, we can feel like we're abandoned. God, why are you doing this in my life? Like, why have you taken this way? Why have you ruined that? Why do I feel this way? But the truth is, we're never alone. He's never left us, and that's the gospel, that God never leaves us.
And honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head before. Like you said, you yourself said, like Christ said, why, my God, why have you forsaken me? So if Christ went through that, like when we go through it, Christ is going through it with us, because like we are literally partaking of his suffering because Christ himself went through it. Like I really like that. Like regardless of, like I think that's the difference between if you're suffering with Christ and without Christ. If you're suffering without Christ, you don't have that hope. You're not suffering with him. But when you have Christ, you're suffering with him and you're partaking of his suffering, and you have that comfort and that hope that, like, because with the loneliness and with that pit, like, comes the resurrection and comes the comfort and comes the consolation and all these good things in more abundance. Like 2 Corinthians, I think chapter 1 says it. Like, as much as you suffer, there's like more consolation and there's more comfort and like so much more. It's a matter of enduring, but sometimes we don't endure, and so we miss out on that consolation and that comfort and that resurrection and that new, like, renewal.
Looking at it from like a practical sense, and actually trying to get to that renewal and trying to get to the other side. I think it's a matter of, okay, I'm in the lonely state, recognizing that you are, and understanding why it's bad for your health. Understanding, looking at why God set out society the way it is, in that we're meant to be united, we're meant to be in fellowship. Why? Because we're not meant to be lonely. And just as David was saying, that it wasn't good for man to be alone. And so looking at it and saying, okay, recognizing those lonely or those negative thoughts that you have, and saying, and almost pushing yourself, almost like manipulating yourself out of those negative thoughts and saying, this is my perception, this is not what the truth is. And looking at not the quantity of your relationships, but the quality of them, and trying to almost fix yourself out of that negativity. And so you don't then isolate and activate those thoughts and say, I'm gonna sit alone and sit by myself and seclude myself from everyone, and then it gets worse.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes in that state we can victimize ourselves, which can be really bad. Like, I know so many times where I've just like started feeling sorry for myself because I've read into something and like, it hasn't even been the case, and my sister just like come in and she's like, suck it up, like you're being ridiculous, stop being stupid, move on, kind of thing. Look at it in a positive light, try and win the situation, but like also like emptying yourself out before Christ, like in that state, just be like being completely honest, like I feel alone, like why, even if you question him, like you'll never leave that prayer feeling lonely as well, you won't leave it feeling that.
I think like you guys were mentioning like the cross and the Christ suffering, how that's pretty much our hope. That's the only difference between someone who has faith and someone who doesn't. But like it's the same with death. Like how do I struggle to understand how people cope with losing loved ones when they have no faith in resurrection and no life to come, and like everything's meaningless. It's the same like loneliness and depression. Like where's the hope? And I think for us, our hope is God. And like when we see Christ and how he deals with us, how he's the good shepherd, knows each of us by our own names, knows us intimately. Like in Isaiah it says that each of us are precious in his sight, or precious in us. And that's the reason why we can talk to him, we can open up to him, and he wants that. Like he's the only one. Like I really feel sometimes loneliness comes from like we trust in people that we love. Even people we love let us down. Like our parents can let us down, friends can let us down. You can be stabbed in the back, you can read into a situation wrong, and like, but God never lets us down. He's the one.
The same yesterday, today, and forever.
Exactly. Yeah. And his love for us is complete and unconditional, self-emptying. Like that divine love, we won't find it in any relationship here on earth. Like he's the only one. I think is the hope for our loneliness.
100%.
Yeah, but sometimes like a lot of us, we fall into that trap saying, "Oh, I'm just 1 in 7 billion, like or 7 million."
Yeah.
So like, how do you like, you know what I mean? Like
I agree.
sometimes, like
Yeah, like because God is God. He's not like a man like us. Like we delegate our time. And like if we even with a group of friends, we have to spread ourselves over the friends. And like someone gets more of us, like he's not like that. Like, but he's like, he went. You know, I love it when priests explain the cross and the passion, and they explain how it was for me and it was for you, like one-on-one, like that one-on-one relationship.
But sometimes you still can't help but feel like Christ feels that way about every single one of us, like, and all the saints and everything. Like, how do we move past that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard though. Yeah. I think that we sing about how amazing God's love is and how all-encompassing His love is.
But I think, like when you experience Him personally, like you will understand that, like it's, when you don't experience it,
it's like
then it's hard to.
Taste and see the Lord is good. But taste it, maybe then we'll
test it for yourself, exactly,
Alright, so it's a pretty good start, guys. Really enjoying that conversation. So don't go anywhere. We've got another exciting half coming soon. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to pick up where we left off, talking about loneliness and how it relates to our spiritual lives and all that kind of stuff. I want to start with the question, is loneliness a feeling or is it a state of mind or what is it? Bossy, can you shed some light?
Yeah, to a certain extent it's feeling like look, we all have the need to belong somewhere. It's a fact. Every one of us has to belong somewhere. The question is, where do we put that? Like, where do we put that feeling of the needing of to belong? Like, do we belong to people around us, or some people want to belong with the heavenlies, the saints? Like, I remember a story about Pope Carlos. He was in a celebration, and I think the relics of Saint Mark's was being, and then there was festivals and people talking. So Pope Carlos said to the monk next to him, said, "Can you see all this?" He said, "None of this is worth one day in the Tahuna." So Pope Carlos used to live in Solitude. He said, "None of this can compare to just one day being in solitude." So like that's just that feeling of content.
Yeah. I think there's a difference. Like some people try and like use like loneliness or like the emotion of loneliness as an excuse to not be able to be alone. Like all the church fathers say, it's very important to be able to be alone.
Yeah.
Like how do you spend time with God when there's like other people there? Like how can you have one-on-one time? Like you like I think they said the sign of someone who like has good prayer, like a good relationship with Christ, is they're able to spend good time on their own. That, and I think, I don't know, like talking personally, I have learned really to enjoy my time on my own. Like where like I would actively like leave like a group of people and go sit on my own, just like to be on your own. It's like like how else can you, like in a practical sense and in a spiritual sense. Practical sense, like how can you just sit there like, now if I'm on the panel, I'm just going to leave you guys and God, please be with me. Please, like, how could you do this to me? Like, I'm not going to do that in front of people. Just, like, just look like you're talking to the sky. But, and just spiritually speaking, like what Anthony says, like, in order to talk to God, you need to block out all distractions. So we have to learn to be alone without being like alone.
Like there's a big difference between loneliness and solitude. Like loneliness is specifically like you said, you can be in solitude but not. And solitude, like it's a beautiful thing as well, but like also loneliness is a very serious thing that affects a lot of people. Like.
I think Jesus himself showed us that difference because like many times in the gospel we find him withdrawing, going to the Mount of Olives. Like I think it's in the Gospel of Mark, and before he started his mission, he was off praying on a mountain. The disciples like had to come and find him. I'm like, where were you, man? Like we're trying to start everything, and like that's how he started. Like he would withdraw himself. And it would say he would go to a place early in the morning, or like as he was accustomed, it said like this was his practice. So like all of us, we need that quiet time. We need that one-on-one time with God.
And maybe people who feel loneliness are just not used to being alone, like not used to having time on their own.
But I think it's not necessarily time on their own, because you can be like alone and feel fine, but just in a group of people and feel very, very lonely. Do you know what I mean?
Like
it doesn't have to be by yourself.
There are some people that like they're like they find when they're on their own, oh no one's with me.
The silence is too loud.
It's the end of my life.
Yeah, that was deep.
Psychology.
So what about so we're talking about being with other people and that kind of thing. What about like relationships? Like having a significant other? Like do we agree that like where does loneliness come in? Like if you're single and loneliness, that kind of stuff. What do you guys reckon?
I feel like a lot of people think that the cure to their loneliness is to be in a relationship. Like they think that is the problem, which I think is a really dangerous way of thinking, because if you go, like you can be in a relationship and still feel lonely. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that you're void of like feeling that way. Like the only, like we said before, the only thing that's going to fill that gap is Christ. So we have to, like as single people, like you have to learn to be content with what you have, and like and you have to learn to like love Christ more, and like know, and you have to understand that, you know, Christ is the only thing that's going to fill that gap. And then I feel like when you understand that, like, do you know what I mean? Like a lot of people like use it as a cure, and like maybe it might work for a while, but at the end of the day, you're still going to realize that this isn't filling that gap, you know. And I think it's just one of the the many things that people use to like to pursue to like fill those gaps, like celebrities. They pursue relationships, money, everything, and they're still not satisfied. It's just one of those things that
I think that's like one of the problems. Like sometimes you might see like with your Christian and non-Christian friends, like people just moving from like one relationship to the next, like looking for something. Like it's like I think you need to like to build yourself, and then like you need to find Christ. Like you need to build your relationship with Christ, because like when everything else fails, like the relationship with Christ will be there. So it's not something that we can look to people who like feel loneliness and be like, oh, you don't love God, or like you don't know God. Like I think it's something very, very difficult to attain. Like I think it's a virtue to like have a relationship with Christ, and it takes a long time, and it takes bad experiences and good experiences. It takes being alone to know that Christ is there, and that you need to build yourself with Christ before you can bring someone else in.
But I've heard of many people who've gone into a relationship thinking that's secure, and they realized that it wasn't, and then they found Christ that way, and you know, that was like how. So I think everyone's different, because I feel like some people will go in thinking that it's going to cure them, realize that that's not like going to fill the hole. Nothing else is. It's Christ. But some people will go in and be like, no, this isn't the right relationship. This is it. This is it. Like they'll keep making excuses. But there'll always be a point in time where it's revealed to us that Christ is the only source of satisfaction that, you know, is going to like to beat. Like, do you know what I mean? So like we have to.
I feel as though like the church brothers knew that when they were like. They tell us like repentance before confession, and that time that you sit down by yourself and you're assessing the times that you sinned, and the you know, realizing that your unity with God is the utmost fulfillment. I feel like that them teaching us that is them recognizing that you need that time alone with God
to restart, even just to like.
But I don't know, like. All right, depression. Depression is sometimes a medical condition.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you say to that? Like, if someone's going to say to you, it's not my fault, I feel like this, it's a medical condition. What do you say to that? What do you say?
Like in terms, like as in, like reflecting on their spiritual life type thing, or?
No, like if someone is saying to you, look, like there's nothing wrong with them, but like it's a medical condition. Like, like they wanna change, but it's built into them. It's a hormone imbalance. Like
I feel like you can use every single thing to like use it to draw closer to God. So like I'm not saying like I think depression is a very serious thing.
Yeah, it's a bit like in Australia the prevalence is crazy.
Yeah. But like if you use it to like draw closer to God and to really cling onto Him, you might still suffer depression all your life. But like you will like struggling for that. I think is. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know if I.
Yeah, but I think like God is very just, and He's very merciful. Like all of us have our own crosses to bear. Some of us like, you know, temptations and like people have like punch-ons with the devil and things like that. And maybe for some people like their cross to carry is that medical, and it's a very serious condition. But I think like.
And I think sometimes in our community we think that, not in our community, but like as a society we think like depression is like being void, like you don't have a relationship with God because you're depressed. But like. I think it's different, like, because you may still have depression, but you'll still have that hope inside, that inner joy. I don't know, like.
And I think as well, like,
I think it's very tough. Like, I don't think it's something we can understand.
Yeah, and as well, like maybe if we're not suffering with it, speaking to someone who does suffer with it, there's that danger that we're really like, you know, pushing on an area we don't understand.
And exactly, and you never know who had, like, it's very easily kind of disguised.
Yeah, not something you can make like a judgment on.
But I think like all things are possible with God. Like we know that like these conditions, like there's always hope, and we're that, you know, as St. Paul says, when I'm weak, I'm strong. Like where there's more hurt and suffering, God's grace and His beauty would be more apparent. Like I know a lot of people, like youth that maybe were addicted to drugs, like hardcore, and they like had like schizophrenic conditions as a result of that, and they're recovering. And you always see God's hand in their lives. Like He never kind of leaves them like that. But I liked some of the points we touched on. You know, like even finding Christ through like failed relationships. Sometimes like a relationship will end, but people walk away with a lot of lessons, and they walk away realizing, you know, I can't fill that gap with someone else. Like that's where God, like, I remember one of the deacons in Kenya, like he's very young, he's only 21, and he's still studying and stuff, but he gives like 6 months at a time of his life just to serve. And like one of the guys on the trip asked him like, don't you want to get married, like this consecrated life type, like, and he was like in his cute accent, he was like, girls are nice, but God is nicer. Like, and I think whatever fulfillment you're going to find in someone else, it does not even scratch the surface with like tasting God's love and the richness of the spiritual life that Christ offers us.
I think once people find that taste, like it's very hard to forget.
Yeah. Beck, did you have something?
I would just say you can't. A human being just doesn't have the capacity to ultimately fulfill another human being.
Yeah.
It has to come from something divine, something ultimate, something that's beyond us.
Yeah.
It's just not plausible. And so when you're trying to look for it, you're gonna fail if you're looking for another person. Whether that be anyone, any sort of relationship, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Even like marriage itself, it's just to point to Christ's love for his church, like that intimacy between a man and a woman. Ultimately, it's just to teach us how much God loves us and how beautiful that intimacy with God is.
And to practice that, like using like an opportunity to practice the love that Christ that Christ had for us. Like,
But practically speaking, the last couple of weeks I'm sitting at home, I feel really lonely. Like I go to church, people are nice to me, but there's no solid relationship. Practically speaking, what do I do? Do I change the way I speak to people? Or like I say to myself, what kind of servants are these? You know, like at church, like what do I do?
What do you think, Basi? What do we do?
It's a big question, man.
What do you think? Yeah.
It's a big question.
Start us off and then we'll see.
Let's brainstorm.
No, I'm curious. Personally, for example, I'm sitting at home, I'm lonely. What do I do? Like, should I change the way I talk to people? Like, should I not be looking for? Like, I'm serious. Like, I really don't know. What do you
If you want to see change, you have to almost like change the way not change the way you are, but change something. There's no change is going to come if you're just sitting at home and don't change anything, not even one aspect of your life. So I feel as though like the most important is your relationship with God, and all things flow from that. So work on that first. You know, if even it starts with a small prayer, anything, it has to be some sort of change if you want to see change. I feel as though your perception will change, or you have to be proactive about it. Change one thing.
I went through a phase where like when I had finished school, like I felt like I had no friends and like I wasn't really involved in like the church, like youth and all this stuff, and like I was really, really struggling. And I think like one aspect of it was like trying to be positive about it and just enduring through it and trying to put myself out there and trying to like, and just like persisting like with Christ and like regardless of, you know, what friends were coming and going, like Christ was the constant in my life. And then like, I think once I had enjoyed, or once I like when I was patient, like blessings just started coming in, and I was like I can't even remember a time before that where do you know what I mean? So like, I think it's different for everyone. Like some people will go away and start feeling sorry for themselves. Like I think that's really dangerous. Like, but if you're physically doing everything you possibly can, and you can't, like, you're putting yourself out there, whatever, you know, like it's just in God's hands. Like it's something you have to be patient with. Like,
I think
I
that's
don't know, like,
two really important words out of that: patience and perseverance. Like we need that for everything, for sure. And I think like another thing is prayer, and honest prayer. Like you know, in Exodus 33 it talks about how Moses spoke with God face to face, as if I think it says like as a man speaks to his friend. Like God is our friend, and Christ called us to friendship. Like when he said, no greater love has none than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. And then right after that he says, you are my friends. Like you're no longer servants, you're my friends. Like think about the King of the universe is asking us to be friends with him. Like we need, when we pray, it has to be like brutally honest from our heart. Like, God, I'm lonely. Like, God, I'm angry. Like, God, I'm finding it difficult to like put myself out there. Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel negative about other people? Like really put it all before God. Like offer it before Him. Like I think that's a big step. For sure if we do that, He'll answer us. Like, because that's a promise from the Bible. Draw near to God, and He'll draw near to you. Like this is our God. He wants to come. He wants to hear those honest prayers and to answer them.
Just as fuel for that perseverance, I feel like we should remember in Corinthians where it says, like, you know, love never fails.
Yeah,
and if,
for sure.
you know, God is love, then you just have to, like, perseverance here is really important. And just keep that as the fuel for your perseverance. Really, really.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And I think it's something important, like you can bring up with your confession partner. Like if you are feeling lonely, like perhaps it's something that you're doing wrong, or perhaps it's something that, you know, Christ wants you to learn from it. Like maybe like going to a spiritual father, like he can see things from the outside, and he can, you know, he can help you out with that. Like not only like, you know, suss out like, you know, how like you can change it or whatever, but also like how you can benefit spiritually from that situation, because you can benefit spiritually from any situation. And like Uncle Man, one of the servants in the church was saying that like regardless of like, okay, say for example a trial or tribulation that you've like gotten into yourself, or if it's from God's hand or whatever, always see it as if it's from God's hand and he's trying to teach you something and he's trying to get you to benefit from it. So like if you see that loneliness as something that like it's from God's hands and whatever, like not like anything bad, like it means that good will come of it. Do you know what I mean? Like you can learn to, you know, draw closer to Christ. You may find friends like that God is prepared for you, you know, in another place that you might have to search for when you are only going to search for when you're lonely. So like I think that it's always, you know, but there are times where like in Ecclesiastes says time for everything, for mourning, for dancing, for this, for that. So like there is a time where you have to sit with yourself and you know, and assess that and whatever, like everything, like
I think like something people tend to forget is like people tend to complicate things. I think if we just keep things simple, like I think like you sit in your room and you overthink and like, oh, have I done this wrong? Did I do this right? Did this person do that wrong? Like I think if we could just maintain simple and not like try and delve into like I think a lot of problems come out of complicating
like
things.
overthinking things.
I think having simple faith, everything in simplicity comes easy.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for that discussion. I really enjoyed like learning from you guys. I think we got some really interesting ideas about what loneliness is, how it relates to our spiritual, and what to do, like I hope, in times of loneliness. So yeah, thank you very much, guys, for tuning in, and we hope to see you soon for another exciting episode.